5th, 1985, Great Falls, Montana. At approximately 11 p.m., paramedics Ed Day and Cliff Davis received a call to report to the scene of a shooting.
All right, hang on. Step it up. Situation is serious. Hang on, clear? 10-4, run off. You're clear.
As we were beginning to respond to the call, the dispatchers stated that it was multiple gunshot wound, not just a single gunshot wound as they had originally thought. The officers on the scene that night were saying, you know, he's really bad. We don't know if he's breathing. It's hard to tell.
How many shots? Several. Looks real bad.
Let's go back in the oxygen bottle. Yeah.
Cliff Davis was horrified to discover that the victim was a member of his family.
I saw the cowboy boots, and I immediately knew it was my brother Morris. Obviously got very upset, and I really don't remember that part, but Ed said I was screaming. A long period of time passed when I really don't remember exactly what it was they said or did, and they were continuing to do CPR, and when we had enough people that we could pick him up, he was a very big guy, so we picked him up and put him on the stretcher.
Come on, guys, let's go.
As we were loading him into the ambulance, I remember his hand slipping off the side of the stretcher and just hanging there, and it began to hit me more and more when I saw his hand there, since it was so lifeless. There's a crawl space between the front, the cab of the ambulance and into the patient compartment. I remember looking back and seeing my brother laying there, and thinking, you know, you got to live, you've got to live.
3 and 4 and 5. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5.
Cliff's brother Morris was pronounced dead on arrival at a local hospital. He had been shot more than 8 times. The apparent motive, robbery. The killer's take, less than $300.
Why would anybody do this? It's so senseless that someone would take someone else's life. There really isn't any reason good enough to kill another human being, and especially my brother, because you know, he was very full of life, a very well liked person. You know,
Morrisdavis Jr. was just 23 years old when he was killed. 4 months before his death, he took a part-time job as a deliveryman for a local pizza parlor. On the night he was murdered, Morris was making a delivery to a local home and had no idea that he was walking into a lethal trap. Police believe that earlier that evening, the killer selected a vacant house and removed a for sale sign from the front yard. The perpetrator then forced his way through the back door of the home.
Address, please. 4105, 6th Avenue Northwest.
The original pizza order was placed by telephone to Howard's Pizza at approximately 8:34 in the evening.
No, that's it. Oh, how long is it going to take?
There was no phone service to the house, so the call would have had to have been placed from another area.
Are you going now?
15 minutes later, the pizza was ready. Morris was the next available driver. At approximately 9:15, he headed out on what was to be his last delivery. item the killer took was Morris's delivery wallet. Although investigators had a motive, they had no suspects and no murder weapon. The case remained at a standstill for 3 years.
Hey, sir, put your keys on the top of the car now. Okay, get out of the car, keep your hands up where I can see them.
On May 11th, 1988, detectives got an unexpected break in the case. 180 miles from Great Falls, local sheriff's deputies arrested a man driving a car which had been reported stolen in Oregon 3 days earlier. When officers searched the driver, they found 2 receipts issued earlier that day by a pawn shop in Great Falls. One of the receipts was for a .22 caliber pistol, which had also been reported stolen.
Hey, this is a stolen gun I got out of a pawn shop downtown. It's apparently stolen out of Oregon, and they'd like to have the gun back today if they could.
Well, it's a .22 semi-automatic, and it's the same brand they suspect is being used in the Davis homicide.
Police sent the
I'll get a
pistol
hold
to
of
their
it.
ballistics lab for tests.
Firing two.
Incredibly, the bullets from the gun matched those recovered from the crime scene. Investigators now had the murder weapon.
Hands up where I can see them.
Detectives learned that the man who had been arrested had stolen the gun from a friend in Oregon 3 days earlier. The man was eventually cleared of any involvement in the Davis murder and claimed that it was merely an odd coincidence that he happened upon it in Great Falls 3 years after the murder. Police then contacted the gun's owner, who asked to be identified only as Rick. He told investigators that he had no involvement in the murder of Morris Davis, and in fact had an alibi.
In March of '85, when Morris Davis was murdered in Great Falls, I was taking care of a newborn son, which I just had in January, and I kept the gun in my hall closet in between some heavy blankets, and so me and my wife were the only ones who knew where it was, so I have just no explanation as to how it would have got out of there and into Montana to do the murder.
We did spend extensive time with him, interviewing him and polygraphing him, and at this point I have no reason to believe that he was involved in this homicide. We have done some background checking on him at the time, where he was at the time of the homicide, and we believe at this point that he was not involved in it and has no knowledge of it.
In this case, the discovery of the murder weapon has raised more questions than answers. Is it merely an ironic coincidence that the gun used to kill Morris Davis ended up at a pawn shop in his hometown 3 years after the murder? And who could have taken the pistol from Rick's home in Oregon in 1985, use it in Montana to kill Morris Davis, and then returned it without anyone knowing?
It all goes back to one person. To me, logically, it goes back to the one person, and that's the person who owns the gun. It can't go to anyone else. That, I don't know the man, I don't even know his name. But from what the detectives have told me is that this man owned the gun. He was the original registered owner of the gun, and his gun was used in this murder. No one else's. And it's been positively identified as the gun, and he knows nothing about it. It doesn't wash with me. It doesn't make sense.
I've thought a lot about how the gun actually got out of my house and went down to Great Falls and committed a murder, and then came back into my house without me knowing it. And I've just, it's just a complete mystery to me, and I just have no idea.
I'm still looking for the answers now, and I don't know if we'll ever find them, but I hope so.
Obviously, guns don't get up and walk off on their own. Someone had to have taken the pistol, a .22 caliber semi-automatic, to Great Falls and murdered Morris Davis. But who? There's a $7,000 reward being offered for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person responsible for this murder. If you have any information, please contact the Great Falls, Montana Police Department or call our toll-free number, 1-800-876-5353.